Thanks so much for taking your time to join us today and attending our webinar, Building Your Communications Team, What It Means to Manage a Chatbot. And I'm Kirk Daulerio. I'm the co-founder of AdmitHub. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a student impact platform powered by behavioral science and AI. I'm going to help facilitate the discussion today. I mentioned earlier that we encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat section. You can send to all panelists and attendees if you toggle that switch. Perhaps let us know your role, your institution, maybe one thing you're looking to get out of the webinar or something you're curious about. I already see some great introductions in there as well. Thank you, everyone. And just a quick note on Q&A. We'll leave plenty of time for discussion at the end and questions and answers, but you can also ask questions at any time in the chat section, either to panelists only or to everyone. We'll hope to cover as many as possible, time permitting. So our leader in today's webinar is Katie Carroll. She's the Assistant Director of Orientation and Recruitment at the University of Wyoming. Go Pokes! And I'm going to pass it to Katie for an introduction.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirk, and welcome, everyone. As Kirk shared, my name is Katie Carroll. And gosh, this is going on my second to third year working with our chatbot, Cowboy Joe, at the University of Wyoming. I've been in Laramie 13 years now. I'm a proud alumna of UW and have worked in our admissions office since 2010. So I've seen many different aspects of our recruitment process, our onboarding process, and I'm just super excited to share with you a little bit about my role with AdmitHub and with Cowboy Joe, and really what we've put together is, I think, a super innovative and really exciting project at the university, and it is truly proven to be very successful working with our students. So thanks for joining us today.
Also, super grateful to you, Katie, for taking time out of your week, because you're on the road for the University of Wyoming in Minnesota at some high school fairs and high school visits. So this is unbelievable that you're joining us for this webinar today. So many thanks.
Of course. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You bet. So I wanted to just set the stage here a little bit for what you're going to learn about in today's webinar. As more colleges are implementing conversational AI and chatbots in an effort to meet students where they are, their staff are seeing their roles shift in order to make the most of this technology. And Katie has really embraced this new responsibility as the primary manager for Cowboy Joe, Wyoming's chatbot, as she had mentioned. And it in turn helped the university reduce summer melt by over 32% and also enrolled the largest first-year class in school history. Now, in this webinar, we're going to learn a bit about the University of Wyoming. Katie will then discuss the challenges she and her team were facing with traditional communications in engaging prospective students. This leads into a discussion around how they implemented their chatbot Cowboy Joe. She's then going to report on the impact of this initiative on enrollment and student engagement. And finally, we'll leave space to address your questions. And just a quick reminder for those of you who joined late, you do have the option to ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat section. We can get to those either in the middle of the conversation or hopefully at the end. And you may send your question to either panelists only or to panelists and attendees. So with that, I'll pass the mic back over to Katie. All yours.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who may or may not be familiar, the University of Wyoming is located in beautiful Laramie, Wyoming. Our big claim to fame, we're actually the only four-year school in the whole entire state. And so it really provides a very unique perspective working with students through the recruitment process and the onboarding phases. And, but yeah, for me, it's one of my favorite parts. We are a research institution. We are founded on engineering and agriculture, but we have approximately 9,800 undergraduate students and a total enrollment of just over 12,000 students with 2 professional schools on campus. So Division I sports in the Mountain West Conference, but yet our average class size is 30 and our student to faculty ratio is 15:1. If that did not roll off like you were standing in front of my table at a college fair, I don't know what would. But we have some unique expectations being the only four-year school in this state. There's kind of this understanding that we will be all things to all people throughout the state of Wyoming and a lot of our students that we're working with. And so provide some interesting aspects of stakeholders and the voices at the table, which really we'll talk about here in a little bit, but have provided some very interesting but very integral pieces to the onboarding of our chatbot. and this role as the chatbot manager. And so for us at the University of Wyoming, Cowboy Joe has been a big part of our team. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys, diving a little bit further into where we were a few years ago, pre-moving into working with AdmitHub and our chatbot. So traditional communication, those of you that are on the college side, which there's quite a few of you here, as you all know, we have that ever pondering question of, are they even checking their email? Do we have mom's email? Do we have students' email? Did they get that postcard in the mail? Did the dog pick it up and run away with it? Why aren't they answering my phone call? Well, I think the big thing we found at UW is we can do all of those things. The minute we send them a text message, they respond. So for us, it was really working through the challenges of traditional communication, of what's working, what's not working, not just what kind of communication, but the time and energy that goes into it. We are an admissions staff at the university of just over 12 recruitment staff members, and then about 5 to 8 processing staff members. So we're a smaller admissions department for a 4-year public institution. And so there's a lot of staff hours going into putting together these publications, working very closely with our institutional marketing department. A lot of our communications, of course, we're coming across the table as very transactional. Hey, it's October, time to apply. FAFSA just opened. Did you know housing is going to open in the next week? In order to sign up for housing, you need to confirm your enrollment. So we found that the communications were much more, we need you to do something, not necessarily talking about our campus, talking about our institution. We were putting a lot of time and energy into it. And as you all know, if any of you work on the budget side of things, these traditional forms of communication can be quite pricey, whether you're looking at the actual printing of, does it have a glossy cover or a matte finish? Should we do a pop out? Will that attract their attention? And then the ever famous, what's it going to cost to mail it? So all of these were great forms of communication, but we were not necessarily seeing the response rate that we were looking for, not necessarily getting those touch points with the students that we were hoping for. So we knew that to move forward, we definitely needed to find ways to reach our goals. And so clearly for us, this was an area we were interested in, but I think hopefully you all can relate that these are pretty typical challenges of some of those traditional communications that we've used in the past. So with that, Kirk, if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about this next slide.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm sure this is not going to be new information to all of you, but it's just something that we are always thinking about, and Katie's been thinking about as she's been talking about traditional communication, in that every student's path is really unique and divergent. And as she had mentioned, these traditional communication methods haven't really always historically necessarily put the needs of those students first to help them navigate this complex path to and through college. And so we're as you know, we're seeing this negative effect in the impact it's having on enrollment and persistence. 14% of admitted students, which is around 350,000 a year who are admitted to college, don't show up for the first day of class. And over 40% of enrolled students tend to drop out of college. Moreover, 43% of recent grads are underemployed. So they're either underemployed or in their job they're overqualified for. So it's really crucial for all of us to begin communicating in a student-centric way so we can sort of help these students on their unique individual paths. And artificial intelligence and the chatbots that we're going to be talking about and that Katie has implemented at Wyoming has really helped universities reach students where they are, kind of meeting them with the right message at the right time and guiding them along that personalized path to success. And so I'm going to pass it back to Katie to tell us how and why UW decided to bring this technology on board and transform the way that they engage students.
Awesome, thanks, Kirk. So for us at UW, those of you who might be familiar with Wyoming as a state, being out here in Minnesota, it's been fun to hear people's responses of, Wyoming, do you guys ride your horses to school? Do you have running water? So, I think a lot of times there's been this perception of UW, maybe Wyoming as a state, the university, you're a little behind the times. So when we were looking at how are we best going to reach these students and meet them where they want to be sought after in the recruitment process, we knew that it meant maybe diving a little into something that we hadn't touched before, hence looking at this chatbot process. Our current AVP of Enrollment Management had worked with AdmitHub at his previous institution and had some awesome successes with their chatbot. And so Kyle met with me and said, this is something I'm thinking of doing. Do you think this would be kind of a route that our students might be interested in? And so we really started to look into those opportunities. Our admissions department had been under student affairs until a few years back. We moved in under our academic affairs, which can definitely pose some new challenges when you're still focused on the student and their success, but you now are reporting to a whole new set of administration, looking at true numbers and retention and onboarding processes. And so we knew that the goals had been set pretty high and that we really wanted to work hard to achieve these. And so with this new administration, as Kirk alluded to earlier, two of our really big foci for our chatbot were looking at our strategic goals on enrollment growth and then reducing summer melt, which those of you on the recruitment side know that those two go hand in hand together. So we knew that from year to year, we had a lot of students show a lot of interest. They'd commit by May 1st, but then we'd start to lose them over the summer. So whether that be, in the state of Wyoming, a lot of students thought moving to Laramie, a town of 30,000 people, would be way too big and way too much of a challenge. So they would decide to stay at home at a local community college that might be a little bit smaller. Or we also had a few that would then, maybe plans changed and they decided to go into the workforce or take a whole semester off, a whole year off, and do some backpack trip somewhere. So we really wanted to find a way to keep these students engaged. They had been involved all year with us working on their recruitment process, and we did not want to lose them. As well as then, I think with any college right now, we're always looking to grow our incoming freshman classes. And so that was a big part of reaching out to AdmitHub to implement a chatbot on our campus. So for us, with all the institutional changes, we knew, although our current modes of communication, working with these families and these prospective students was successful to an extent, we knew that our current staff abilities with a smaller team and our communication plan definitely needed a bit of a facelift to meet the goals that we had at hand. Hence the rollout of Cowboy Joe. So Cowboy Joe is definitely become a huge part of our team. And I think that's been one of my favorite parts working as our chatbot manager is, even though yes, he's named after a Shetland pony, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, but Cowboy Joe really has become very integral in the work that we do with these three whys. So as you can see for the University of Wyoming, a big part of implementing our chatbot was determining the why, the what. Why are we using this product? What is he going to help us with, or what will it help us with? So for us, as I alluded to, the three big things were reducing summer melts, improving our student connections and that sense of belonging to the University of Wyoming, and then increasing yield and enrollment. As you guys are looking at potentially implementing a chatbot in your institutions, these might be some of your areas of interest, but a lot of other schools or entities might be looking at things like decreasing overall call volume. We're blessed to have an awesome front desk lady who is phenomenal in taking calls, but that may not be the case at your institution. Other schools have used chatbots to focus on FAFSA completion rates, on-time bill pay, improving campus event attendance, definitely working on engagement and response rates to different needs and identities on campus of things that, lots of different topics that you could look into. Improving student retention, 4 to 6 year graduation rates, looking for improvement there. So the chatbot can honestly take on many forms to help you accomplish many goals and really help you develop that why. So for us at the university, once we identified the areas that the chatbot would help us with our goals, now came the really fun part, actually determining who and what this chatbot was going to be all about. So for us, we named our chatbot Cowboy Joe. So UW actually has a couple different mascots. We're the University of Wyoming Cowboys. The cowboy that you see to your right is Pistol Pete, but Cowboy Joe is actually a Shetland pony who comes with a lot of sass and a lot of attitude. So when I was working with our recruitment team, and there he is in all his glory, Mr. Cowboy Joe, when we were working with our recruitment team and our administration, we wanted something that was going to be memorable. We wanted, instead of just that text message that you get once a month from the Target pharmacy reminding you it's time to fill your prescription, we wanted students to see the name Cowboy Joe come across their phone and know that that meant something really exciting was in that text message. So for us, we really were focused on making him memorable, but then giving him a personality with a little bit of an attitude to really match what that mascot is for UW. So Cowboy Joe, or like I mentioned, the University of Wyoming is known as the Cowboys and the Cowgirls, but Cowboy Joe has quite this funk and pizzazz that we knew would make that successful addition to our team, especially when it came to connecting with our prospective students. So in our work with Cowboy Joe, especially as we were doing introductions and building those relationships, that was one of our goals we were focusing on, we really wanted to use a fun tone. So whether that just included emojis, GIFs, pulling on that fun aspect of campus. Where we've seen a lot of success implementing this chatbot is not just making it be transactional. So just those tasks of, hey, you started an application, but it looks like you haven't finished yet, or thanks for submitting your application. Now we need your transcript to review. But in turn, it was those fun things. What's going on campus? What type of student is successful at UW? Like we talked in the very beginning, a lot of times, you might pick up a phone ready to call a student, but they may not actually respond to that phone call. Sometimes when it comes to that breakup stage, you've worked with them all year long and they've decided to commit to another institution. It might take 10 phone calls, 5 emails, and an in-person conversation. They're still afraid to tell you, but they're not afraid to tell your chatbot and respond quickly if you've built that relationship with them. So for us, every transactional message that we send out, we try to follow up either later that week or the next week with some kind of fun interactive message. So it keeps that engagement going with your chatbot. It really helps build that relationship between the prospective student and the university, but all the while driving them through the recruitment funnel and helping them work towards what they need. I think one of the best responses that I got from a student working with Cowboy Joe in our first year, we launched early May, so really moving right into summer melt with our fall 2018 class. And a student said to me, Cowboy Joe is kind of like an older sibling. I feel like I can go to him for anything. I can tell him my fears, my worries, my excitements. And he's not necessarily like that nagging high school counselor, or really, let's be honest, he said he's not like you, Katie, that nagging college recruitment admissions representative constantly saying, hey, we need this done. Hey, I need you to submit that transcript still. So for me, that was a great response, knowing that the students felt comfortable and were excited to visit with Cowboy Joe. So my favorite part to Cowboy Joe, and truly the developing of a personality, a Shetland pony might seem a little small looking at some of our attendees on here and looking at your mascots thinking, oh, yep, we just have a little pony at UW. But his attitude and personality are extremely robust. One of my favorite stories of the true Cowboy Joe, or Shetland pony, comes from a home football game against the Texas Longhorns in my early college career back in the early 2000s. And at the beginning of each home football game, when I was a college student, Cowboy Joe would stand out at the 50-yard line with his handlers, getting ready for the football team to run out. Well, the crowd this year seemed to be just a little bit larger, of course, playing the Texas Longhorns in Laramie, Wyoming. And Cowboy Joe bucked and knocked his handlers to the ground and took off towards the Texas sidelines, proceeding to go all the way down, bucking off the football players, knocking them out of the way. So although small, he's very mighty. And we've seen that to be a very big part of our success with Cowboy Joe in developing his personality, knowing that yes, it's just a small piece of our communication plan. It's a small part of our admissions team, but he has been extremely robust working with our community and working with our students. So moving on to really talking about designing the plan. Once you get past that initial development of who your chatbot is going to be and who the mascot is, and may not even be named after a mascot, but for us, really, this was the important part, designing the plan. What's it going to look like to roll out our chatbot? So it did take a lot of coordinating, a lot of conversations, a lot of reporting back and forth with our stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, being the only four-year university in the state, our legislation is frequently on campus. So everything from talking to our Board of Trustees members to the high school counselors that we interact with day in and day out on what would make sense, what kind of communications, what kind of text messages should we be sending out to our students. So we wanted to be intentional in making sure we are sending accurate and timely messages, but still developing that sense of trust between the students and the chatbot. We definitely were focused on what kind of outreach should we see from Cowboy Joe. So some of that, of course, really relates back to the admissions funnel and where the student is at in the process, whether that be, just starting with the general inquiry of, let me tell you about our university. I'm so excited to have met you at this college fair, all the way to that senior who truly is comparing school A to school B and trying to narrow down those final decisions. And as always, working with AdmitHub has been absolutely phenomenal. I was even joking with Laura and Kirk as we were putting together this webinar that as soon as I showed up for our initial planning meeting, the slides were put together. They had taken an initial conversation we had had and turned it into this awesome webinar, something I thought I was gonna have to start from scratch, and I did not need to do it all, which was wonderful. So
we got
Kirk,
you, Katie.
Always, thank you. Yes, any kind of hiccup that we've had or clarification on how do I upload this report again to make sure it gets sent to the right students, or hey, it's March and we've got all these students that have been admitted and we're trying to get them to confirm what kind of topics should we send out, what type of text messages might be beneficial. So between developing Cowboy Joe's personality and laying out our initial plan of the implementation, it was definitely time to look at how is this chatbot going to fit into our overall communication strategy and what all will go into managing it. So this is where the chatbot manager really has come into play. So a lot of people reference me on campus as Cowboy Joe's human, as I've been the one to really work with him through this process. Some of our fun conversations that we have with the students, they're like, well, who are you? Who's texting me back? Who responds to me? And for us at UW, it was awesome because it really was a true campus-wide entity working with those stakeholders to onboard this chatbot and really give that voice to Cowboy Joe. So very much so, he became a part of our team. But in turn, I am that chatbot manager who works really closely with putting together the content that we send out, the when are we going to send it out. So it's a very fun role to include for sure. A big thing, and my brother-in-law even asked me this when I told him I was going to be doing this webinar today. He was like, wait, you got a new job? You have a new title? And I was like, well, it's not officially a full-time job or a job title, a change on campus for us at the University of Wyoming. And I think that's a fun part to this chatbot manager role, is it can fit into many different areas. It's not just in the admissions office. A lot of chatbot managers come from an institutional marketing department. They might come from a communications background. They might be on the student affairs side or the academic affairs side of things. And so it was more of a shifting of responsibilities than taking on a whole new job. As Kirk mentioned, I was at the Blaine High School Fair this morning. I did 2 high school visits. I'm popping onto a webinar about Cowboy Joe, and I'll wrap up with a fair at Minnetonka High School tonight. So it's very easily added into the day-to-day beings of an admissions office or whichever office takes it on. It gives us that chance to fill a hole, for lack of better terms. If you get to a point in your recruitment season where you've realized, oh my gosh, we financially just rolled out a whole new requirement, or housing opened 2 months earlier than we were expecting the housing application to open up. Might be a little bit difficult right then and there to put together a whole new publication or a calling campaign. It could be the middle of October, and if you work in an admissions office, your whole staff is on the road recruiting. The last thing you want to do is a calling project right then and there. And so this chatbot really has been very integral in those, for lack of better terms, last minute or immediate responses that we need to send out. So the role of the chatbot definitely will vary throughout the recruitment cycle. And more so, like I mentioned, that's going to come with a shift in your typical day, not necessarily a job change, but really just looking at what those roles and responsibilities might be. So I can't remember, Kirk, I think this maybe came out of our initial conversation we were talking, but for us at the University of Wyoming, a big thing we've been able to see is that we've been able to add more projects. We've been able to add more touch points with students, more opportunities to engage them in their recruitment process, but without the added work. So like I talked about earlier, we have blended really well with our institutional marketing department at the University of Wyoming. So we have that support of our designers and our web coordinators who are putting together a lot of the content for us. But we're now able to take and really give kind of that 1-2 punch, for lack of better terms, that ability to say, hey, you should have just gotten this grit postcard in the mail, or you should have just gotten this optimism postcard in the mail. And then Cowboy Joe can follow up with, let's talk about what it means to have grit. Let's talk about what it means to be an optimistic student at the University of Wyoming. So it's almost expanding upon that initial project, that initial thought and idea that came from our communications team, but giving even more insight into what the university is all about. For me, having this shift has really opened up some awesome doors for me. I was just at a conference last week, and one of my colleagues was talking about leveling out. You know, I think a lot of times in higher education, if you work in an awesome admissions office, as I do, your supervisors above you may or may not be leaving anytime soon because they are in a great institution. They enjoy the work they do. They enjoy their team. So for a lot of us, the chatbot manager is a great way to include and kind of shift those roles and responsibilities, but to continue to build a resume for yourself. So for me, the addition of the chatbot manager really wasn't an overwhelming addition. It wasn't too much to take on or add more projects, as we talked about, with more work. It definitely meant just shifting some things around, but building more opportunity for myself within my current position. So it opened up some additional doors, some additional avenues. I have been pulled into a few more of our conversations with our administration and with really those integral key players at the table. So for us, it's been very much so a driving factor into the success that we've had with our recruitment process, but yet is pulling more conversation into the why of what we're doing with our recruitment process. It's giving myself, but really my team, a huge voice at our table when it comes to working with our administration on what our strategic goals are, what we've set, and really developing that overall university-wide communication plan. We definitely focus on tailoring our student interactions with the university into specific timeframes throughout the admissions funnel. So that helps as well as far as the time management, kind of knowing, obviously there's going to be times of the year that are busier than others, but with the knowledge base, with the mascot tool, you can do a lot of the planning and a lot of the work for implementing these campaigns and putting together these text messages that'll be sent out, you know, in the months prior to the busy fall travel season. And then all it comes down to is using the product and jumping in and uploading a list or filtering out a list and set the date and time and you're good to go. So there's not this added work, but there's this added ability to really bolster the conversations and the communication that you're having with your students. So you might be wondering, okay, it sounds like a lot. You've onboarded a chatbot, you developed a personality, you designed a plan, you connected with who's you're gonna work with on campus. What is the actual time commitment to truly being a chatbot manager or having that role added to your current position? So from this little grid, you can see prep and launch of the chatbot is probably where the majority of my time was spent. And this really was a team effort through the university as we pulled in multiple different entities to help us launch our chatbot. A big part of the chatbot process and onboarding is building what's called the knowledge base. And for those of you that have a chatbot or have worked with chatbots, it's really the brain of your chatbot. So this is where students are getting their information from. When they text in a question about parking, this is where the response is going to come from. So for us, we knew this was really important to have a super robust knowledge base. We also might be a little bit competitive at the University of Wyoming. So when we were challenged with, well, can you text in more information to your knowledge base than one of our previous partners? You better darn well believe we took that one on and we did our best to beat that goal, which I think we may have.
That was so cool. You did. You crushed it. You crushed that goal.
Thanks, Kirk. So for myself, that was probably the larger part, just because we really wanted to make sure we were onboarding a very successful chatbot. A lot of it, I think, comes down to your passion for the project. You know, anything that you're passionate about, you're excited about, you definitely want to dive into and spend more time doing. So as much as it was 1 to 3 hours a day for about 3 weeks, it didn't feel like 1 to 3 hours a day because I was excited to build our chatbot and is excited to build that personality. I think a lot of it too comes down to, like I alluded to earlier, what's feasible for you right now and what can you work towards for the future. So once you get the prep work and the launching of your chatbot put together and training the brain and the knowledge base, your daily check-ins might be anything from 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day, or you may not do anything with your chatbot, you know, for a couple days in a row. So it really comes down to what is the need when. When it comes time to develop these campaigns and putting together what you're going to be sending out to the students, we have a team that I work with in our admissions office. So we kind of go through month by month and look at, okay, it's March, where are our students at? We want to make sure we send this very specifically to our students that have been admitted, or, you know, okay, last month of following up with the students that have started an app but have not completed. How can we encourage them to complete the process? So for us, we meet about once to twice a month really to lay out our campaigns, but then the actual building of the campaigns in the mascot tool is so simple. Once again, thanks to AdmitHub for every time I'm like, oh, it'd be really great if we could have a library of campaigns to pull from. You know, there's awesome partners working with AdmitHub, and ultimately, yes, we all have our unique little oddities that we have in our recruitment process, but ultimately for us, it really is, we're all working towards the same purpose, to move students through the admissions funnel and to get them to matriculate into our university. So why not have this library to pull from? And sure enough, what did AdmitHub launch here in just the past couple weeks? A library for us to pull our campaigns from. So the process of actually managing a chatbot can be extremely manageable, adding it into your day-to-day work. Super user-friendly. I joke all the time with Kirk, I am the most IT illiterate person in our office. And if I can do it, anyone can do it because it is so simple.
I'm going to concur with you and say I'm the most IT illiterate person at a tech company. Katie, there's a question that came in about having the potential for multiple staff members or admins on the chatbot. Can it be a shared role? I have an answer for what we've seen with partners, but I'm wondering if you have a perspective on that as well.
Yeah, great question. So truly up until just a few weeks ago, I was primarily the only person that really was going in using kind of that admin function with the mascot tool. We do have multiple people at the university, though, that have access to the mascot tool that could log in and definitely be included in that, or in the process of putting together campaigns and sending things out. For us, just being a smaller office and knowing that we kind of met as a big group and then it kind of funneled down to myself as the chatbot manager to put things together, that's just what happens to work best for us at UW.
Yep, and we've seen at other colleges that they will share responsibilities. Multiple people will have access and see and check in on conversations and set up campaigns, etc. I would say for the most part, someone is sort of the lead chatbot manager, as Katie is at Wyoming. But you can definitely have multiple people sharing. And then another question came in about connecting to your CRM. Are you connected to your CRM, Katie?
Yeah, so, and this is actually something that we are diving even further into with some future opportunities with AdmitHub. Currently, we are Salesforce users with our CRM, and so we have been using the Salesforce ID to really link back and forth and add in activity histories of these texts that have been being sent out. Like I mentioned, and I think Kirk can definitely chat a little more to this, AdmitHub once again read the minds of what we needed at UW. And I think there's some awesome integration that will be coming with connecting to a CRM as well.
Correct. Yes, we're actually going to be doing a deeper integration with Salesforce, and actually you could sign up for a demo for that Salesforce integration to learn more. I'll actually put the link in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirk. Perfect. Well, transitioning into not just the time management, but the fun part of, for me, Cowboy Joe, and working on really where my time is spent now is definitely more of our chatbot strategy, more of the fun stuff. So for us, this is where I get excited. We've launched this awesome chatbot. We're building a relationship. So working to find what students like, what information they're looking for. I joke with my husband that 31-year-old Katie, this is her trying to relate to an 18-year-old incoming college freshman. But for us, it's really building those campaigns. It's meeting students where they want to be met, sending out the things, for example, like our Happy Valentine's Day text that we sent out a couple weeks ago, really just showcasing campus. Laramie, Wyoming in February, we're going to have snow, but all of our student ambassadors are still there with smiles on their face, showing the love that they have for campus. Others can be truly just a quick touch base with them. For example, Cowboy Joe here checking in to see if you'll be a cowboy in the fall. Tell me what you're thinking about UWYO. They may not be comfortable telling me to my face or over the phone, but they're definitely going to respond and follow up with Cowboy Joe to let them know where they're at. Like we said, adding in that sass, adding in that excitement. Cowboy Joe spent a lot of time with our summer melts, focusing on that connection to campus. So every Friday we did a trivia question about campus, which then in turn led to some awesome giveaways for the students that participated and got the majority of the answers correct. But these are the things where, how do you take your everyday communication from the typical email or postcard and turn it into something that the students really are excited about and looking for? We have found that not only using the chatbot for the fun stuff, but also constantly working around the clock to make sure that he's providing the best customer service to our prospective students has been a big piece of working with Cowboy Joe. So these are
Katie,
just
you mentioned something. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good.
I just had a quick question. I had a quick question based on, you said something really interesting back there about students maybe not wanting to give you a sort of upfront answer, but they will be very open and forthright with Cowboy Joe, right? So I know, like for myself as a former college admission officer, and for you and for college staff, you have this really sort of great intuition about working with students. And have you really seen that phenomenon and in terms of students being more open with the bot than they are with you or the staff or your team?
Definitely. And I think a lot of it, like we talked about, comes down to building those relationships with the students. But I have had times where there have been students in some of my local area high schools that I've tried to reach out to and just never hear back, don't get responses but then I'll log back into the mascot tool and can look back at a text that we maybe sent to prompt responses to something. And you'll see that they've had, you know, a 10 to 12 text interaction with Cowboy Joe. So I think they just feel safe. I think sometimes not knowing that there truly is a face behind this AI chatbot, they know the information is getting shared with whom it needs to be shared with, but they don't necessarily have to have that conversation face to face.
Little do they know that Cowboy Joe could run you down like it did Bevo.
Exactly, the world of social media and technology. So
that's great. Thanks, Katie.
Of course, definitely. So with the development of our knowledge base, we know that Cowboy Joe is able to answer the questions that these students are sending in. So this slide really just talks or kind of shows some of those interactions and shows some of that input. A lot of times I was just working with some of our newer hires on campus, and you might get that email from a student or parent that has 15 questions, and it's going to take you 30 minutes, if not more, to sit down and truly answer these questions in detail and provide great insight. And here a student could have a 15 text exchange with Cowboy Joe in 5 minutes, and they're going to get the answers right then and there. They're able to expand upon further information. So if the student jumps in and says, okay, I need to complete my FAFSA, what's the deadline? Well, here's the national deadline. Great. Well, we ran into this issue with our family. So what about this? And as we all know, students start with FAFSA and then end up with orientation and then want to go back and figure out how to contact their advisor. And Cowboy Joe can manage all of that information and follow at the pace that the student has set for them. So it really helps save us a lot of staff time by onboarding this chatbot, knowing that students are instantaneously getting their responses. And let's be honest, we know that they're not all texting between 8 and 5 a.m. 8 and 5 p.m. They probably are texting between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. So for us, it was nice to know that Cowboy Joe was always there, definitely connecting with those students. For us, we have definitely seen a ton of success with Cowboy Joe, but some of the big campaign highlights that we've really seen a lot of success has been our interactive campaigns and our interactive surveys. A lot of times we'll have students who may join in on a conversation in the sense that they definitely are receiving the text messages from Cowboy Joe, but aren't necessarily actively engaging. They aren't necessarily following up right away. With these interactive surveys, though, we've seen a lot of engagement with our students. The trivia has definitely been a popular or an absolute favorite for our students. We've had approximately a 33% response rate on our overall surveys, but the most famous or the favorite trivia question came down to our cowboy mascot. So who was Cowboy Joe named after? And we had just under a 40% response rate on that. Our intent to enroll campaign has been one of the largest response rates that we've received. But the best part to this is it helps us keep our data up to date. It gives us that opportunity to really look at who do we need to continue to work with as they move through this recruitment funnel, because it was real-time data, but showing us where a student was at, if they were truly planning to commit to UW, if they were planning to go elsewhere, if they just had questions and needed someone to follow up with them. This survey gave that opportunity for us to connect with them at the appropriate times. A lot of times we'll find that the responses, oh, sorry, Kirk, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I had a question about that, Katie, because you're seeing very high response rates to these large campaigns, right? So a lot of students are interacting, they're answering questions. They might also be asking questions that need responses from folks on campus or another connection. And there's a question that came in on the chat about how do you, as the chatbot manager, manage these larger campaigns and the interaction that ensues.
Great question. So we've got specific territories that we work with. So once we send out some of these campaigns, especially like the intent to enroll, where there was the option to essentially opt out, I'm no longer planning to attend UW, please remove me from your list. I'm still planning to attend. I'm coming. Great. Go Cowboys. And then I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Can someone call? So what we'll do is usually within about 24 hours of launching a campaign, I'm able to go back in through that mascot tool and then export a list of essentially what those responses have been. So one list, the opt-outs, goes to our processing staff to clear and remove those students from our CRM. The list of Go Cowboys, if we have time, a lot of times we've sent just a follow-up, like, we're so excited you're joining the Cowboy family. Check out this video on why the world needs more Cowboys. And then just that excitement to build that hype about campus. But then staff-wise, time-wise, we've now been able to take a list of 3,000 students and narrow it down to the 500 that want a phone call because they're lost. They don't know what to do. And then as a staff, we divide those out by our territories, going from what would have potentially been 300 to 400 phone calls per staff member down to maybe 20 or 30, depending on the territory and where the students are coming from. So these campaigns can be really helpful, not only just initially saving staff time because Cowboy Joe is sending out the information, but B, when it comes time to following up, we know we're being purposeful and intentional in who we're following up with because they've told us they want us to follow up with them.
Related to that, Katie, there was a question that came in about students opting out. So, and I realize that the opt-out rates with Cowboy Joe are very low, but if a student opts out, do you no longer consider them a prospect and stop communicating with them otherwise, or are they still in your communications flow with other channels?
Great question. So it does kind of depend on the opt-out. A lot of times students are able to send like a hashtag pause to Cowboy Joe that essentially pauses messages for a short time frame. So maybe for whatever reason, we've sent more than they want right then. Maybe they're getting ready for AP testing or a retake of their ACT, and the last thing they want to hear about is why is Old Main called Wyoming University on one side versus University of Wyoming on the other side. So with those, of course, they clearly stay within our prospect pool and we continue to work with them. If it's a true opt-out and they've asked us to remove them from the list, we just have a pretty basic postcard communication that we send. And currently, just to get more information on kind of why they've taken off or why they're leaving UW, actually working with our AdmitHub team, they shared some great ideas of you could even dive further into, okay, you've asked us to remove you from the list. Why? Can you give us more information? Are you committed to another institution? Is there something more that you want to know about our school? So I think it kind of varies on exactly what that student gives us. Yes, if they're giving us a true, I'm now planning to go to school X, we will remove them from our prospect list and essentially just send a little postcard of thanks for considering the University of Wyoming. We wish you the best of luck. And so that way we are done bothering them. That's in air quotes for lack of better terms, and really can focus on the students that want to be a part of the university.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, kind of wrapping back to the success of Cowboy Joe and where we've been, this I think is just a quick slide to showcase, in the bit of time, essentially a year, or well, I guess not even a year, just a couple months that we've worked with Cowboy Joe. Well, I guess more than a couple months. Good thing I can do my math. That's why I'm a chatbot manager, not a mathematician. We have sent over 11,000 messages from Cowboy Joe. So 11,000 points of contact have been sent out, and only 54 of those messages were ever sent back to a UW staff member for further follow-up. So if there's something that Cowboy Joe has not been trained in the knowledge base, or we're not able to connect with him through our brain or through his brain, those messages will get elevated to specific staff members on campus, which we were able to work with AdmitHub and essentially identify. If it's financial aid, it goes to our director of financial aid. If it's related to student wellness, it goes to the director of our counseling center. So once again, even then, it's pulling me out of the mix as the chatbot and going directly to the source of information that they need, but only 54 text messages. So 99.5% of our messages have been handled and responded to through Cowboy Joe and the AdmitHub staff, saving us just approximately 189 hours of time saved, which is huge. So for us, clearly there's a success there, but our biggest successes definitely came down to the fact of Cowboy Joe helped us to achieve those goals that we had set. In our first year working with Cowboy Joe, specifically towards summer melt, we were able to decrease our summer melt by 32%, and in that year also increase our first year enrollment just under 10%. So 2018, which was when we had launched Cowboy Joe, helped to bring in the largest incoming freshman class we've ever seen in the university's history. So clearly the initiatives that were set with our new administration moving under academic affairs were very easily met through the work of Cowboy Joe. So now that we've seen those successes, we are definitely starting to work towards some additional next steps with our chatbot, knowing that he can be a very fluid part of our team and help in many different areas. We started with summer melt, we got that class in, and all of a sudden we had to say goodbye. And students literally were sending in text messages to Cowboy Joe, as you can see, that ended up going to our Dean of Students office saying, well, what do you mean Cowboy Joe is going away? What do you mean I can't use him anymore? He's been my resource. He's been this great tool for me to go to when I need information. So for us, we are definitely looking into some possibilities of introducing a retention bot through AdmitHub that would then continue on with our current students and help them through their 4-year process. And as always, just continuing to work with AdmitHub on what our goals are and what our strategies are. There definitely was a big change going from working with a smaller segmented 2,000 to 3,000 students who had committed or definitely had at least applied and were looking at committing to UW, to then rolling out for our next recruitment cycle, working with 30,000 inquiries. That definitely poses some different changes to what campaigns and what information you will be sending with your chatbot. And so that's where the support of AdmitHub has been so successful. So as you can see from the student feedback, when we had to say goodbye to our cohort of students we were working with, the students that have interacted with our chatbot, they felt he was friendly, helpful, very similar to the UW admissions team. He was there to support the students in their transition to college and really just help them in many ways. As you can see, I never thought people would tell a chatbot that they love him, but multiple times Cowboy Joe has been told that he is loved and that he was definitely a big part of their transition to college. So overall, you can make this the most consuming part of being a chatbot manager, because reading through their comments, the conversations with a chatbot, honestly are extremely fulfilling and funny. If you were looking for, if you're having a rough day and just needed a little bit of an upper, getting onto the conversation tab within the Mascot tool and really looking through what your chatbot has done, that's where you can get that fulfillment. And like I said, you could spend this part of your day as your whole day, just reviewing the conversations that the students are having with your chatbot overall. So Kirk, hopefully that gave some great insight on what my day-to-day role as a chatbot manager looks like and the tasks that we go through. I can tell you it's been my favorite part of my job in my 9 years that I've been working in our admissions office. I love interacting with the students face-to-face and traveling and college fairs and planning orientation and coordinating orientation. But now having this underlying theme of our chatbot that connects everything together, it really provides my why. Why do I work in student recruitment? Why do I work in higher education? And it's been fun to meet students where they want to be met and knowing that we're getting our information across, all while building a relationship with the university through that cute little Cowboy Joe.
Thanks so much, Katie. We had a couple more questions that came in. We have a few minutes to see if we can answer those. And one was related to the messages that are escalated to you as a staff member or to someone else at Wyoming. How does that happen and how are you notified?
Yeah, so really they're very unique questions. So usually it's extremely personal to that one student. I think the biggest ones we've seen have come through with residence life and dining questions and financial aid, and truly down to things like, my parents are divorced. My mom sent in this tax document, but it's stating my father needs to send in this document. Have you received it? Which then Cowboy Joe is usually still sending, that's a great question for our financial aid team. Please feel free to give them a call at this phone number. As far as notification, that comes through as an email from the Mascot tool, and super simple. It's literally a click of a button and you type in your response and send your email, and the response is sent instantaneously. So once again, the time management piece, unless it requires a lot of research on your end, it's super easy to respond to, and the response is immediate back to that student as soon as you respond or click the button and hit send on the email.
Then the last question was around different channels of student engagement. So Cowboy Joe is only engaging students over text message right now. It's not on the Wyoming website, but these chatbots can be multi-channel. If you wanted it on a web page or website, that's available. It's also available via Facebook Messenger. If you'd like to use that channel, we're also exploring other social channels like WhatsApp, for example. So we've just found, and Katie, I'm sure you would agree, that the largest student engagement that we've seen, or the best, has been over text message. And so most of our college partners will start there, but those other channels are definitely available.
Definitely.
Well, I think that's it for questions, and we're just about right on time. So thank you, everyone, once again, for taking the time out to join us today. We'll be sending out this recording via email tomorrow so you can share with your team. I did notice, as I mentioned, we do have a few of our current partners as well joining us. Welcome, and if you'd like to reach out to your partner success manager to strategize together to go over anything you learned today, feel free. And if you're not working with us yet, we could set up some time to chat. Feel free to email as well. Katie, you've been amazing. You are such a rock star. Hey, let's do this again. Oh, wait a minute. We are doing this again at RMACAC. So I will see you there. But Katie, it's been a blast. Thank you so much. Go Pokes.
Go Pokes. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Wednesday.